So welcome to this episode in the podcast series about wisdom, brought to you by Stuart Neville from Mindful Developments and Adam Wells from adamwells.com. I've got a question for you, which is, how much do you feel, alive? How much do you feel your life? How much do I feel my life? How sensitive am I? The human nature within me, my felt experience, connecting with other people, or the natural world. Am I more or less aware, sensitive, and does that matter? Is it important to kind of feel and be in contact with how it feels to be alive and have that feeling dimension of experience? What do you think?
What came to mind when you said feel alive? The first thought I had was around, am I fully connected to my senses? Does feeling mean connection to your senses? That being in the present moment, you're aware of the full aspects of life, not just outwardly, what's going on, but also inwardly, your emotions and everything else. It's a great question. I'd have to answer it and say at times, most definitely yes, I'm fully connected. I feel life. Other times, not very much at all, really. I think it's that sort of thing between moments of flow, when you're really into something, I'm really engrossed or I'm really engaged. I think I'm feeling life in its fullest form. So yeah, watching some ridiculous TV thing where I'm dumbing down because I don't want to face something. So I see the extremes, and I think being human, going to experience both sides of that equation. But that's what first came to mind. But I think it's important. I do think it's important to fully connect. To feel we're emotional beings.
There's this idea in quite popular psychology, I guess, as well, that when you're kind of up against a situation and you feel scared or at risk in some way or what have you, that you can either go into fight or flight mode, kind of attack the thing, or you run away from it, or you can disassociate from your feelings. And this capacity to not be conscious of the feeling dimension of an experience, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? It's easier. If we don't feel too much, sometimes you don't really want to have a feeling. You just think logically, or you've got to act, or the situation requires something of you, and then you can do it much more easily if you don't have a feeling about it. I kind of believe there's a danger in losing connection with how you feel and anything significant in life. In fact, I think everything in life, really everything in the realm of human experience, naturally has a feeling quality to it, which we're either switched onto or not switched onto. There's this kind of idea of like what's an emotion as opposed to a feeling, and the kind of standard answer is an emotion is a combination of feelings plus a set of other things like perceptions, expectations, attitudes, kind of neural pathway around different parts of your brain, fears, desires, dependencies, expectations, etc., loves, hates, and the kind of complex web of human experience is all of these things, but within that there's feeling, and we can be more or less aware of it. But if you worked on the assumption that there's always a feeling there, but we're not always aware of it, it challenges you really to think, well, you're not really living fully if you can kind of significantly in periods of time, just not have a feeling about something.
Well, the feeling is that perhaps the feeling is always there, but you actively choose to block it or connect with it.
It doesn't. It's not on your awareness. It's not an experience. It might be a natural reaction, but you're blocking it from. It's not coming into your awareness. And I think it's a loss. I think it's a loss.
Is that because, do you think it's a loss because there's a learning opportunity from experiencing that feeling? Because it could be a difficult feeling, a very painful feeling. By experiencing that feeling, there's a hidden gift, which is fully living life.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I mean, there are some feelings which clearly overwhelming or potentially would be crushing for us to feel fully. I think there are times and places for distraction and switching off for sure. But I think eventually if something's difficult, you're not going to grow and move beyond that issue unless you can find some way of making the feelings manageable and understandable and unpacking them. So I think that's part of it. And I think the other part of it is that there's a huge amount of richness and appreciation that we miss out on. If you notice the significant moments in your life, it's when you suddenly realize by really feeling something, like there's a quality of, say, in a relationship, a connection with someone else, and you can go, okay, I'm kind of feeling this kind of natural reaction, feeling kind of connection with somebody. And if you're conscious of it and you feel it, then it's like that experience has a depth to it. Or it could be go for a walk in the countryside, a natural setting and sun in the sky or what have you, the birds and the trees. If you say, well, it's not just visually beautiful, or it's not just something I appreciate this person through my thinking, but actually how does it really feel? And the quality of the experience, it just takes on another dimension. So I think in switching off feeling sensitivity, we're missing out on a lot of joy, and we're missing out on growth that comes from understanding why it is that something feels difficult for us.
The learning, isn't it? It's being human, exploring, experiencing the full range of our emotions and feelings, and also answering that question, who am I? Without being able to connect maybe to your feelings. But these deeper questions that we often end up asking, who am I, my identity, maybe that's part of it too. Is, by connecting to your feelings, you're getting closer to these sort of answers.
Do you know this? Have you heard of this poet, E. Cummings?
Yes.
He's a very famous romantic poet. But he's kind of credited with giving this piece of advice to students who are, aspiring poets. And his advice went something along the lines of, no matter what you think, believe, or know or understand, maybe not understand, but you think, believe or know, to a very large extent, that's come about through the kind of influence other people have on you, to a very large extent. But when it comes to feelings, your feelings come from within. They more represent who you are and your own individual human nature. And if you can act from that kind of feeling base, then you can be creative. As for him, it was as the poetry. You can find a form of word as a poet that connect to the feeling that you have yourself individually, as opposed to the type of person that you become through thought and knowledge and belief, etc., which really, to a very large extent, is conditioned by social factors outside of yourself.
So you're connecting to your uniqueness.
I think it's important for that reason. It's also quite practical, isn't it? Because if you maybe it's a kind of bit linked to practice of mindfulness, but if you realise that in any moment you can stop and say, how do I feel? Or you can bring your attention in the present moment. It could be in a conversation with someone, or it could be just when you're in a period of quiet or what have you. But how does it feel? What's the feeling dimension of this experience? What I'm seeing, like my visual experience, really look at something and then say, what's the kind of feeling quality of visual experience I'm having? Like at any moment we can drop into this other dimension of experience, and then it's kind of multi-layered thing. And when I do that, if my mind is kind of quiet enough and I can do it, my experience feels richer.
So you get the sort of the power of choice as well. Once you're connected to your feelings, you're able to then choose. If it's, I choose to feel this way, or I choose to feel that way, which is good to know that you can respond to difficult events experienced through your feelings with that power of choices. How do I want to respond to things?
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is kind of like an associated thought to what you've just said, but I'm not sure it addresses it directly. But I'm kind of reminded that I've read a book where it's like an internal barometer, or like an algorithm in our biology that tells us, it gives us a message or a signal that there's something to be thought about, reflected, understood, perhaps a choice to make. But it kind of brings us back in touch with our own. That's our natural way of assessing quality of an experience. So I think you're right to kind of make a choice based on a feeling. You're feeling kind of a natural assessment of an experience, as opposed to a social norm, for example, or a logical thought about the right or wrong thing to do in a situation, what have you. To kind of be guided by your feelings, I think does give choice that you can kind of respond.
I mean, it's another level of decision making, isn't it? Because in a way, what I'm sensing is it's intuition and gut. Those intuitive decisions that we make in the gut, I mean, that's feeling. And so maybe taking it to the next level down by connecting with your feelings, you're giving yourself more data points to make a decision. What does my gut say, or what does my intuition say?
You've almost got the thinking part of your brain, the feeling part of your brain, but also the feeling part of your gut, your second brain, and the whole of your nervous system, and it's almost like only using one small part of your own, the instrument of the human being.
And after all, we do feed the gut with food. Where does all the food go for the best decisions?
Feelings, actually, everything in human nature, I think, our behaviour, our diet, our experience, relationship to food, and etc. But it's not just a feeling like I feel this, it's often a feeling really in the body. So I think we're both kind of saying, if we are asked ourselves the question, do you kind of really feel your life? Do you want to feel it more? Is it a valuable thing to have this as a reference point? How asking that question, how do I feel? Like that's an affirmative. That's like, let's.
For me, I mean, I've really gained from this conversation really much is the last few minutes when we got around to it being the gut and the intuition. I very very much lived my life on that plane of what does my gut, what does my intuition say, not really associating it to thing around feelings. And I find that it's simplified my life because I'm out of my head. I'm not so much in my head. It's more of a whole body experience of way of living. So definitely for me, feeling is very important. There's a challenge with it because making a decision based on feeling is a reactive thing, because it's like, I'm not going to do something until I feel it. And so you have to wait around until you feel it. You see what I mean? Whereas in your head, it's often a proactive thing. I want to do X, Y, Z, and off I go and do it with my. That's proactive versus a reactive thing. I'll just wait. Maybe that's part of it. You have to weigh up the two.
Yeah, well, it's not the totality of our human nature, but it's. I think if you just think of it experientially, I think it's at the heart and the centre of the human experience to have a feeling quality. And if you can be in touch with this, I think you're tapping into part of your human nature, part of yourself.
I totally agree.
It's really valuable, and yeah, it's intuition, it's instinct, it's in the body, and it's who we are, and it's the experience of life. It's a sensitivity to being alive, and sometimes it's in our thinking we can kind of devalue it at times and places. We can say, oh, it's being sentimental or what have you, but I think it's fundamental.
Yeah, I'm with you.